Hello, World Mythology class. This is Professor Steve Dunner, and I just want to give you a quick note or two about the Iliad and the Odyssey in Chapter 1. I'm looking today at the Iliad on pages 10 through about 14 in your book, and the first thing I want you to notice is the book starts off with the Iliad as a myth, but it's not a Joseph Campbell kind of myth at all. It's a national epic, and as a national epic, it gives you a sense of identity and who the Greek people were. It doesn't conform to a lot of the ideas of mythology or fairy tales that we've looked at in the class so far, a story of a hero on a progress. Instead, it has magnified ideas of what heroes are like, and sort of exaggerated personalities and exaggerated situations. This is telling people what glory is, as the Greeks say, kleos, and what honor is, as the Greeks say, time, and also what fate is, as the Greeks say, moira. If you look at the story, it's really about competing civilizations. The Trojans are an older civilization, and the Greeks, or the Achaeans as they're called, are a younger civilization. The two civilizations are at war over something that seems to be a myth itself. The story of a fellow named Paris Alexandros choosing between three goddesses: Hera, the goddess of marriage; Aphrodite, the goddess of lust or desire; and Athena, the goddess of wisdom, which is the most beautiful. And he chooses Aphrodite. His name is Paris, after all, so he chooses the goddess of love, as Paris is the city of love. And so whenever you choose one goddess out of three, you wind up with one goddess on your side and two against you. And interestingly enough, these goddesses will side exactly with the Trojans or the Greeks. Aphrodite will be on the side of the Trojans. She is, after all, Ishtar, the goddess we met from Gilgamesh, and she was worshipped in the Hittite area of Asia Minor, where Troy is and still is today. Interestingly enough, Athena, from which we get the name Athens, is on the side of the Greeks, and as is Hera. So it's not only just a battle of two civilizations, it's also a battle of two sides of the deities of Olympus. They're competing with each other. And like the old joke about how when the gods argue up in heaven, it's a war down here. If they play a game or bowl upstairs, it's thunder and lightning down here. So the argument of the gods radiates out, and becomes a devastating war of 50,000 Greeks versus 50,000 Trojans. And that becomes a rather tragic and epic story. In the PowerPoint slideshow that you can look at, you can see that there are some key questions about the Iliad marked right at the top of the slides. These are my Greek mythology slides, which are on your modules, and also in this discussion group that you can start adding your comments to. Can you tell me the story of how the war began, that story of Paris choosing between three gods? Who was Homer? Well, he's a very interesting character. He's the bard. He's the epic storyteller who calls upon the goddess muse Calliope to sing through him. He communicates the words of the gods to the people, and I think we feel that way very often about epic stories and our musicians and our rock musicians and the people who sing our folk songs, because they seem to connect us to something very deep. The story came down to us through oral transmission, and it asks some key questions, which the recent Homeric critic Caroline Alexander puts this way: is a soldier ever justified in disobeying his commander? Must a soldier sacrifice himself for someone else's cause? How is such a catastrophic war allowed to start at all? And why, if all the parties wish it over, can it not be ended? War seems to be something that if you get yourself into, it becomes very difficult to get out of. Giving his life for his country, does a soldier betray his family? That's about competing ideas. Do I obey my father and mother, or do I obey my cause for my family or my country? Do the gods countenance such slaughter? Are the gods involved in war? Do they want us to fight these wars? Is a warrior's death compensated by his kleos, his glory? Those are great questions to think about as you look at the story of the Iliad. If you troll through my notes very quickly, you'll see that I have a lot of basic language about the Iliad. You'll see an explanation of the judgment of Paris. You'll see the story of how Helen is carried off. You'll see an argument that begins the Iliad, which is an argument over a woman, treated as a bargaining chip in war, a ransom. And the fate of women in this story is very interesting. Women seem to be prophets. They seem to be able to see the future, but they also seem to be used by the men and at the mercy of the men in war. The catalog of ships, which is really a giant metaphor about all of the Greek national identity coming together to fight this war. And really the beginning of a Greek identity comes from this story. The myth gives meaning to a nation and tells them who they are. And also stories of the Trojans and how heroic they are, which is a great difference between our modern stories where your enemies get to be as heroic as you are. I don't think we would do that in a modern war. The story revolves around how Achilles is insulted by his commander Agamemnon, and he rejects Agamemnon and decides to stop fighting for the Greeks. And the Greeks start losing this battle after winning it for 9 years, and this is the last year of the war, and everybody is waiting to see how Achilles will return to the battle. And in the end, he comes because a good friend of his cousin Patroclus, is murdered, and so with that, or killed in battle, you should say, by Hector, Achilles returns to the war for revenge, not to fight it for a cause, for glory, or for his own, or demonstrate his own physical prowess, to throw a spear or fight with a sword and a shield, but rather to take revenge upon Hector. And the brutality of that revenge is epic. That is the great story. He drags Hector's body, once he kills him, around and round and round the tomb of Patroclus for 9 days. When Achilles finally stops, it's only at the sight of the old king Priam, who, with his gray hair, reminds Achilles of his own father. And so if Priam, the father of Hector, is Achilles' father, then that makes Achilles Hector. See, when we kill someone in war, we are killing ourselves. And that's the great point of the Iliad. The other story, which is like a monomyth and like a fairy tale, is the Odyssey, and it's mentioned also in chapter 1. And you get great monsters there, the Cyclops and the Lystrigonians, giant cannibals. You get Scylla and Charybdis, female monsters who devour ships and devour men, sirens who lure men to their death by singing beautifully. These are male and female sexual types that the hero Odysseus has to sail his way through this kind of treacherous landscape to get home to his wife. Like a fairy tale, he has helpers like Circe, who helps him find his way back to his wife. He has to make love to her to do that too, so he's allowed to cheat on his wife as long as it allows him to go home to his wife Penelope. And also he has a ghost of a man named Tiresias, who helps him find the way home as well. It's much like the story of Dorothy trying to find her way home from Oz. You have to find, or Pinocchio. You have to find your way through all of these obstacles and make your way home. The fairy tale elements are present all the way through. Athena is the goddess who helps Odysseus, the Greek, home to his country of Ithaca. She's a Greek goddess after all, and he's a Greek. And she will be his fairy godmother or his donor, and perhaps even a helper at times later in the story. He also has a number of other characters who help him, his own son Telemachus. So you can see those elements of the fairy tale. They are present. Odysseus even is Jack, Jack the Giant Slayer, who can slay a giant like the Cyclops by using his own cleverness. So you can see that many of the elements that would come from fairy tales and monomyths and ideas about descent into the belly of the whale or the belly of the beast, which is Odysseus's journey into the underworld, are present in this great story, the Odyssey. So that's some notes on chapter 1. Which includes our look at the Iliad and the Odyssey. And I will be coming back to you with another video on Hesiod and the Greek creation story. Thank you. Bye-bye.